Well, hello, I'm Josh and I'm back once again with another great film to tell you about. And if you've been watching this channel for any period of time, you've likely noticed that most of the films I pick have been pretty old, I would say, largely in the 20th century. And a big part of that is just because I like old movies, but I also find those ones tend to be a little harder for people to seek out without having a recommendation for them. But that being said, great movies don't just come from the 20th century or from America for that matter. So that being said, I wanted to recommend a French film today from 2012 called The Artist. So The Artist takes place in Hollywood during the late 1920s, and it's notable for mimicking the look of actual films from the period. Except for the two leads, the film uses primarily American actors in a film that looks like it is from the golden age of Hollywood. Okay, well maybe this one isn't quite as different from my usual recommendations. Still, it has a French writer, director, and producers, so technically it still counts as a foreign film. The story follows a successful silent film actor, George Valentine, who meets a young up-and-coming actress, Peppy Miller. And when sound is introduced to movies, the silent actor suddenly finds difficulty in making the transition to sound, while the up-and-comer rises to become a star of the talkies. So if you think this film sounds vaguely familiar, you might be remembering that back in 2012, this film actually won Best Picture. And it caused a little bit of an uproar, mainly because so few people at the time actually had seen it. And so when it was actually declared the winner, I know a lot of people were upset that it was not one of their personal favorites that won. And I will say, naming your silent black and white French film The Artist does sound extremely pretentious to an almost comical degree. But that being said, whenever I did watch it, it became abundantly clear within minutes that these choices were not made as some snooty attempt to reach art's full potential or outclass everyone in town. It really feels like the filmmakers just love classic Hollywood and wanted to tell a story within it, using many of the same tools and conventions as a tribute to the films they love. And since these conventions are just so well established and upheld, they're just as easily able to break them whenever they need to, but more on that later. If you look at some of the other films of director Michel Hazanavicius, and I might be butchering that, but if you look at some of his previous work, like the OSS films for instance, you'll see he took a very similar approach, where you see in those films he worked really hard to recreate the look and the feel of a 60s spy thriller. And with The Artist, I was just so surprised at how engaging it was, especially considering it's seemingly fighting such an uphill battle with a modern audience. I mean, I doubt anyone who doesn't already appreciate silent films would watch such a film willingly, and yet if you give it a chance, it is very engaging. The silent film aspect of it doesn't really hold the experience back in any way. If anything, they find ways to make it more engaging because of it. For instance, to mark the emergence of sound, Valentine sets down his glass, but unlike before, you actually hear an accompanying sound effect. The actor is shocked that he can hear this and runs outside as he begins hearing all these sounds of people and cars bustling by. It's incredibly jarring for the character as well as the audience watching, and by this point you've been so conditioned into thinking it's a silent film that it doesn't even cross your mind that they could do this, and then realizing that of course they can. And this kind of subversive technique really creates a bond with the character and the audience. And I mean, the film has a great cast of actors as well. I mean, you have French actors like Jean Dujardin and Berenice Bejo, along with some great American actors like John Goodman and James Cromwell. And there's even a little cameo with Malcolm McDowell. Another of my favorite aspects of this film is just the music. Since it's a silent film, the score is really an integral part of the story, even more so than usual, and I found they really did an excellent job carrying the emotions of the film. And I even recognized the few tracks that they carried over from other films, like one of Bernard Herrmann's themes from the Alfred Hitchcock film Vertigo. And so as I said, all these elements come together to make what's a really great and unique film. And if you give it that chance, you won't be disappointed. And so if you want to watch The Artist, it's available from all the usual streaming sites as a rent or buy option. Physically, you can of course get it on DVD or Blu-ray. This has, as you can see, a very shiny case to it. I don't think there's any real special edition per se like from the Criterion collection, but this version that came out with the film has a really cool kind of slip covered and everything. So I'd say this is a pretty good deal if you're looking for the film. Alright, so now for the comment question. And I'm wondering, what are some of your favorite films that are hard to recommend to people? I mean, definitely in this case, it's nothing really to do with the actual film, but more in just how people initially would perceive it. But I know there are tons of other films that are kind of tough to recommend for either one thing or another, so I'm kind of curious what some of yours are. Go ahead and list them in the comment section down below and start discussing. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to see some more of these recommendations. Be sure to keep watching movies, and I will see you again soon.